Hey y'all, I'm back. Better late than never. Welcome back to Low Power Mode.
I got an excess of black bile, high irascibility, contemplating checking myself into facility, mental ability clearly affected, deep in the dumps, down and dejected.
I've been in low power mode, in low power mode, been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear. I've been in low, I've been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear.
All right. It's excuse me. Yes, it's been one of those weeks where you have stuff on your to-do list and your body is like, no. So know that I always aim to do the podcast on time, but sometimes you just, have to follow what the body says. So that's a part of rest as resistance and what we can do, fight against the need to be productive. So, I say all that, but I feel terribly guilty that this is late. So here we are, and I'm so happy that it's Pride Month, and I get to really, really refocus myself on my history and all of that good stuff that we never learned in school. So, this week I've got a lot of great shit to talk about. It's going to be very hard to talk about it in a shorter amount of time, but I'm going to do my best and remember that just by talking about it, it gives new life. So here we go. Music. All right, so this week I want to talk about Kehlani, a Bay Area and Oakland native artist, and her music video and song Melt. She came out with an album recently called Blue Water Road, and there's a song Melt, and I hadn't heard it until I saw the music video, and it was so beautiful. Similar to the Brown Girls vein. It's like, oh, so underrepresented. Again, to find content that focuses on like femmes or queer femmes who are people of color. It's very rare. Like during Pride Month, you have a lot of stuff about, like, you have the cis gays, you have the drag queens, you have I don't know. I just feel like there's this pocket of people, of folks who are femme or non-binary, gender fluid folks who are also people of color who I just hard to find them. So honestly, if you're getting more of this stuff, please let me know. Like, give me recommendations. I don't care if it's like a shittily made web series. If it focuses on, like, again, like brown femmes, just shoot it over. So essentially, Kehlani is this pop artist. She kind of rose to fame over the. Actually, I'm sorry. I just read about this yesterday, that they go by they now. They feel most comfortable with, like, they. I think they use she pronouns as well, but I'm gonna use they. I'm always down for when people want to use they pronouns. I'm like, yes. So Kehlani has had a tough run, I think. Her mother is an addict, so is in and out of her life. I think she grew up in, like, foster care mostly, and then pretty early on she was able to she hung out with the artist crowd and the music people, and she rose her way up the ranks. I remember being in San Francisco driving for Grubhub, and her song, oh my God, now I'm blanking. Why? What if? It has some question word in it, I think. And there's a remix with Chance the Rapper. Shoot, blanking. But The Way. I think it was called The Way. Oh, it's just delicious pop music, and really, really real. Like pop can be detached emotionally sometimes, and she's just so authentic and has a very strong voice as a songwriter and singer. And so, yeah, I remember starting to pay attention then. And then I think she was like dating this cisgendered man at the time. And then I think Kehlani got pregnant like towards the end of that relationship. But I remember there being something online about her really struggling with her mental health. And there was some sort of like internet kind of corner where she was being bullied, or there was some drama going on. And I just think, wow, this person is like 27, 28 years old, like, or maybe even 26, super young. And to have gone through all that, it's just a lot. It's a lot. To not know kind of who your family is, to have to go through trial and error and figure it out. But she has gone, or Kehlani has gone on such an incredible journey over the past few years that it's really great to see her now. Now she seems to be surrounded by like her found family, her queer family. She talks about oh my God, sorry, misgendering, but she also is okay with she. But I'm gonna say Kehlani. They make it a point to teach their daughter that like gender doesn't need to be like this big definitive thing. And it's so beautiful. So with the music, this song is beautiful. I as a producer of music, I often listen to the musicality, or think about the genre, think about the references musically. But some artists, really, it stands out to me right away, the lyrics that they've written. And it really, I could look it up, but it really feels like she wrote the lyrics too. Sometimes you never know who is writing the lyrics. But the lyrics, and there's these strings in the instrumental that are very beautiful. And so Kehlani is with this partner at this point. I don't know the partner's name. I really did not research much about this. I just wanted to talk about how warm and fuzzy it made me feel. So they seem to be in Brazil, maybe, or somewhere. It's kind of hard to tell, but it doesn't feel like the States. Could be like Mexico. I'm not sure exactly. Again, didn't look it up, just going off of impression. And oh man, it's so nice to see a brown queer person happy and enjoying themselves and like at peace. And I think that this is where Kehlani is at now to create this type of video. So it's her and their part and sorry, oh my God, keep doing it. It's Kehlani and their partner, and they have skimlet. Oh my God, I'm so tired. I swear it's like the combination of Corona and readjusting from the 9-hour delay, and like this class that I've been taking, and when it rains, it pours. So Kehlani's partner has a similar skin tone to Kehlani, has, maybe similar textured hair. And there's lyrics about like, I don't know where my my skin ends and yours begins, if I didn't have these tattoos, and like where my hair ends and yours begin, like this kind of thing of like being reflected in your partner. And I think we're moving into this space where we as society generally are are less looking to like date up, if that makes sense, or like someone of color date a white person in order to benefit from that wealth and privilege. Like I think we're moving into this place where we're kind of like looking back towards our communities and finding people who affirm us through values. And it's really beautiful. That's what I get from this music video. There's just these very tender moments. It kind of makes me feel like wow, how dead inside I feel when it comes to love, because I haven't figured it out for myself, like as a queer person, and corona and moving back in with my mom and all these things. It's like, okay, you there's always time. There's always time to figure out love. And Kehlani, in their few years on this earth, has been on this journey that has landed them in this place of being able to love freely, being able to be a parent that who feels like they have like vision and values guiding their parenting, and without parents, like without growing up with parents. It's so impressive. It's so heartwarming. And as I said, as we look at the folks throughout history, like in the queer community, we have to remember the I don't want to make anyone who is trans femme feel excluded from that, okay? But I feel like there is this, no, I wouldn't, yeah, I feel like trans masked femme people get it and understand too, because once you make the transition to experiencing being femme full time every minute of every day, you catch on to the oppression of femmes and women and cisgendered, women, like all over the world, internationally. All of this to say, I feel I feel like this section of society is just so undervalued and appreciated and loved. I hear so many stories about femmes and queer people getting beaten verbally, physically, abused verbally, physically, and so finding the light, finding the joy, I really don't take it for granted. Go after my own journey, and I look at this artist who's really been through it, and is thriving. It's so special to see. So if you get a chance to check it out, Melt by Kehlani. I haven't listened to the Blue Water Road album yet, but I'm sure it's wonderful and serene. And what a great artist. What a great artist to have around these days. There aren't many like Kehlani. So let's roll on over to TV. Television. Now, Today I'm going to be talking about the one, the only TV show, Pose. Okay, if you haven't seen Pose at this point, I don't know what you're doing. You got to cue it up and you got to watch this because there are TV shows that, are creative nonfiction, like they're fictional. And there are TV shows that are super based off of real life events. So it's like barely fictional. I feel like Pose is one of those TV shows that has been designed, orchestrated, looked over by many, a person who's invested in trying to tell a story. So Pose is history, and it is done in a fictional way, but the characters in Pose are based on real people, and Pose is capturing a time and a change in New York City and AIDS and ballroom culture, and it's wild. So if you haven't seen Paris is Burning, this is always a great place to start. Now, essentially if you don't know anything about ballroom culture, here's the deal. Because so many queer people have continuously are kicked out of their homes, they end up on the street, and many of these queer young people are creative and hopeful and dreaming. And so what happened was there was already drag culture. Okay, we're talking about this is like late 70s, early 80s, I guess. So there were already drag queens and drag culture, and there was a pageant, a drag queen like pageant in New York City. And the legendary LaBeija, queen, she essentially, when she didn't win the pageant, she walked out. And there's I think it's a documentary. It's called The Queen, and it is about, it could be fictional, but it's about this era, so like pre Paris is Burning. But LaBeija walked out of this, she essentially like snapped off and like went off and was like essentially saying, y'all discriminate against the queens of color, and like you gave it to this white like queen, like her makeup is fucked up, this, that, the other, like I am beautiful and I know I'm beautiful. And it's really, this was a very important moment because by her being excluded at these very white kind of drag pageant settings, that caused her and her sisters to create the ballroom, where they created their own categories and their own parties. So essentially, it's like taking a pageant but then making it super fun, and everyone stands up instead of sits down, and everyone's enjoying instead of judging. And that is the way that the ballroom culture came about. So there was a person in ballroom named Paris Dupree from the House of Dupree, and Paris was going through like a Vogue magazine one day, and was looking at like all the poses that the models would be doing, and then so Paris kind of took those poses and brought it to the ballroom, and this was arguably the start of voguing. Okay, so this is early 80s, this is, or maybe mid 80s, pre Madonna Vogue. Okay, pre. So okay, so Pose is a TV show that captures the ballroom culture like once it's been established, and focuses on like pretty much the mid to late 80s, like into the 90s. Now, Pose, the TV show, it was on like FX or FX something, some subset of FX. But I remember it was streaming on Netflix and now it's on Hulu. And so the fact that this TV show is mainstream is huge, because the thing about mainstream TV and queer POC is that there is so little representation. I constantly hear people say the same two things over and over. And Pose just happened. They constantly say Paris is burning and Pose. These are like two of the biggest references of queer POC culture and history. And we're talking about one documentary made by a white woman, and we're talking about Pose created by Ryan Murphy, a white man, a gay man, but still. So that's complicated as well, like who is creating the art and bringing it in. But as we know, we need white people. We need people with privilege and who can pass maybe as straight or whatever to be able to bring our stories into the mainstream. So the fact that Pose was made, has been made, and exists on these streaming platforms is incredible, a miracle, and also a bit shameful that that it's the only one of its kind. That's what I have to say about that. But in the same breath, you have to see it. And I think some more context is that the queen, the characters, characters and people, the people featured in Paris is Burning, this legendary documentary about ballroom culture made by this white woman, Jenny Livingston. Many of them were not, they of course were so happy to be on TV and be in a movie and this sort of thing, but many of them were not paid, were not treated super well. So it wasn't like this piece of work necessarily changed the lives of any of these people in the way that Pose has changed the lives of the actors in Pose. And I think there's something like 50 something transgender actors. So Pose made history for being the TV show that hired the most transgender actors ever for like a major network TV show. So this show, like I say, important, and it's like in all capital letters, underlined with an exclamation point. And, you know, there have been criticisms of Paris is Burning, and there are criticisms of Pose. And I think the MC who the character Pray Tell is based off of is totally alive and well, and kind of like, why didn't you ask me anything? But there was one or two people who were, it was a Pendavis, I forget exactly the first name, but there was someone who was around in that ballroom time consulting on the show. But still, it's very complicated with who gets to tell these stories. However, the amount of history, the amount of gay history, queer POC gay history packed into these episodes is astounding. You watch an episode and it feels like you're just watching a regular show. But if you go and you look up some of the things that are referenced in the script, and I have to give it up to Janet Mock, one of the writers, and Our Lady J, I think another writer on the show, incredible, because like the type of art that I'm into, they make it seem, narrative, like you're just following any average person's life. But the context and the story and the backdrop are all weaved into the lines. And so you learn so much, even though essentially the show takes place between like a few different locations, and we're constantly there. The context that it builds is incredible. Some of the things that I was that I got from just watching the show and then like open new tabs of were things like ACT UP. I don't know if I think my mom had heard of this, so like maybe my mom's generation is familiar with ACT UP. I had not heard about ACT UP, but it's the AIDS Coalition to Unleash Power. And this was formed in 1987. And it was this group, grassroots group, who came together. You know, there's this speaker at this lesbian and gay community services center in New York City. And essentially, and his name was Larry Kramer, right? He had co-founded the Gay Men's Health Crisis, but had resigned from the board of directors in '83. And Kramer asked the audience at this lesbian and gay community services center in New York City, do we want to start a new organization devoted to political action? And the answer was a resounding yes. Approximately 300 people met 2 days later to form ACT UP. And then ACT UP went to have like international chapters, and I think even, I meant to say national and then even international. But this is ACT UP was kind of like a Southern Christian leadership conference kind of initiative. You know, that was like a bunch of young Black people organizing and strategizing in how to do protests and how to use civil disobedience in order to make a point, in order to demonstrate a civil right or lack thereof. And so I think with ACT UP, it's so important to know about this, because this work, this political initiative, and all these people, all these gay people who had buy-in have paved the way. So, and I'm just hearing about it. That's a thing that's crazy. Like, I love Pose, and I love being able to access my history and these things that I feel like I should have known. But it also devastates me because I feel like I should have known. And why did it take me so long, especially when I identify as queer? So, just a side note. So, ACT UP did, they protested at the U.S. Supreme Court building. They did stop the church. And so one of the scenes in Pose, in Pose is like in the late 80s at this time, people were dropping like flies from AIDS. It's also interesting to think about AIDS and coronavirus and like the politics around them. That's like another whole podcast. But yeah, this disease was killing people, and not just gay people, but it was so politicized as a gay disease that the people who were suffering from it did not get access to the drugs that they needed, you know? So these people, these protesters, these people who started ACT UP in New York, you know, they had this motto, silence equals death, you know, and it literally did. Like, this was huge. This was so huge. They really did. They paved the way. And there's so much of this packed into Pose. In the actual series, there is this die-in. That's what they are called, die-ins, okay? And so the idea is that the group of people protesting against the church condemning, you know, or holding up abstinence as a solution, you know, it's so impractical. And so they would go into the church and lay down on the ground and do this die-in, and then they would chant about like about what was going on in Silence's death, and you're killing us, and like all of this stuff. So this kind of gumption, this kind of courage, you know, and this kind of political action and performance art almost. It's wild. It's wild, and they explore that in the show. They have a scene where they do it. They do the die-in, and oh, it's so well done as well. Like they have during that part of the episode, they have like the old school camera and like the new cameras that they use. So like you feel like you're actually there, and then you feel like you're seeing it being taped as well in the late 80s on like an old camera, VHS camera or something. It's filmed beautifully. There's so I could talk about just the cinematography and like the production elements of the show, but I have to talk about the content because it's so important. So yeah, another there's very many individual stories. I'll mention Indya Moore, who plays the character of Angel. um they display through the character Damon, you know, this young black gay boy getting kicked out of his house in Pennsylvania, and going down to New York, living in the streets, and then this woman, like transgender woman Blanca, who's part of the ballroom scene, is starting her own house and kind of takes Damon under her wing. And so Angel is another one who she takes under her wing. And in Angel's character, she is doing sex work and, you know, trying to get by, and also having dreams of being a model in the you know, the cis straight white world. And so Blanca like pushes her to get there, but there's so many dark things that happen along the way. Indya Moore's actual story is so reflective of so much of what happens to queer POC, but it also like during this particular era. So and also using they, them, and she, her pronouns. So I think they and she is totally good. And so Indya Moore, from the Bronx, Haitian, Puerto Rican, Dominican ancestry. At 14, they got kicked out of the house, entered foster care, and then, you know, just getting bullied as like bad as shit, moving around the boroughs, but became started working as a model at the age of 15, and eventually getting their GED. So at 15, Indya Moore began working for photo shoots for Dior and Gucci. Okay, so like the highest level of like photo shoots in fashion houses. This real life trans woman was there at 15 years old. That blows my mind. This also is so great. The Wikipedia page is totally where I'm reading from right now. It says, although Moore was booking modeling gigs, they became increasingly disenchanted with the fashion industry and its emphasis on body image. I love that. I love that. Like being like, I want to be a model, and then even at such a young age being like, this is not it. Like I don't feel good around this. So they were doing a dance and like ballroom class, and with Jose Gutierrez Xtravaganza, okay, coming from the house of Xtravaganza, and they were also doing background for the TV show The Get Down. And Jose encouraged Indya to pursue acting, and then Indya went for an audition for this film Saturday Church. And actually I saw Michaela J. Rodriguez, who plays Blanca Rodriguez is in that film as well, and I think there's another queen another actor who is in Pose is also in this film Saturday Church. So yeah, I thought, wow, okay, oh my gosh, so much, like so much. What a ride! What a ride! Homeless, bullied, Gucci and Dior. I mean, crazy. Okay, and the thing about India's story is that that is the like that's like the simplest grab you could take. This person has been through so much. So when you don't have a home and you're trying to live as a different gender than the one you're assigned with, you need hormones. You need hormones that cost money. You need like health insurance. These kids don't have that. So they barely have like a government name or like a name. They barely have a name that can get them things that they need. And so when India was 15 or 16, uh, they were taken in by a transgender person who allowed them to try their supply of hormone therapy. And so India said that's when she started to feel like herself. But then like a year later or something, abruptly that person denied her access to the drugs. Now, it wouldn't be right, if she had insurance or she had another way of getting them, it wouldn't be as dire. But like once you've had a taste of being who you want to be, getting the medicine that you need, how are you supposed to go back? And so that's what happened. I mean, I found this article on Elle.com, and India's talking about it. And she says, they told me that they had a lot of friends who were trans and they wanted to help me in my process and that they could help me to get the money that I needed to be a woman. India says, such a weird sentence, right? She accepted the invitation of these strangers, she says, and they told me that all I had to do was play with these men who will come in for a moment to see me and play with me, and then they'll give me money. India speaks in a soft monotone as, okay. So I said, okay, she said, and I did that. I stayed with them, and they had men come over and have sex with me. They taught her to use protection and told her she was safe because they would stay in the room to watch as it happened. In exchange for that protection and for getting her clients through an ad they placed on Craigslist personal section, which was shut down in 2018, they'd take a cut of her profits. They told me I needed to do it continuously so that I could afford hormones, she says. She was 16 years old. 16. She says, I didn't understand what sex trafficking was at the time, she says. The language I knew was that they were basically my pimps, and I was just a kid. Over a year into working for them, she found herself bloodied and beaten in a dispute over her hormone therapy. Oh my God. Ugh, these babies. So when she wasn't when she was on this downfall, a boyfriend in the Bronx and his mother took her in. She wanted to repay their kindness, so she says, whenever they didn't have money, I secretly sold myself online to bring money and food to the house. Thing is, we learn what we're taught. This is me, Breezy. We learn what we're taught. We learn what we're taught when we're teenagers. So if you're 15, 16 years old, and the only thing that you have been taught, you've been, thrown out of your house. So you've been probably taught not to love yourself. And then you're also taught that in order to be who you are, you need to do sex work. And you're a kid. You're a teenager. It's crazy because once you put that in somebody's head, how are they not going to go back to that? in the future when they need money. So it's not only that trans people by the light of day can be harassed or bullied or killed, but it's also that psychological warfare of you ain't shit, you ain't worth shit, so you should do shit that you don't want to have to do for work. And I don't want to like downplay sex work, but it's like it's not for teenagers. You know what I mean? It shouldn't be. It shouldn't be. It is. It unfortunately it is, but it is not for a 16-year-old to be pimped out and sex trafficked. Like sex work should be a choice, you know. So what happened after that was, you know, she sold herself online to bring money and food to the house. What followed were more foster homes, a police record, time in prison on Rikers Island on an assault charge from a fight with a boyfriend, a stint in an institution where she was misgendered, taken off her hormones, and given antidepressant medication, and a drug addiction. Now, being like, I wouldn't say I'm addicted to weed, but like smoking weed every day helps me cope with life. How the fuck are you supposed to cope with all that shit and not get addicted to drugs? I simply don't know how, because you have to escape what your brain knows. You know, you have to get to some place that feels okay. And I think for many queer POC, for many trans folks, especially trans femme women of color, it's again that psychological warfare. It's so the existence is so challenging, just to be who you are, just to walk down the street and wear what you want to wear, you know what I mean? That you have to find some way to escape. I think it's so inspiring, Indya Moore, because they are an activist and they are an actress, and they started a production company, and they have their hands in so many things. I read that they're executive producing a show that they're going to be in as well. It's like a, oh, do I still have the page up? No. It's like a remake on like this vampire film, but it's gonna feature, it's like a gender bending like vampire film. I don't know, it sounds incredible. But all of this stuff does not cover up all of the shit that queer people of color go through. They are discarded, and they are shown every day that they don't matter. And so I think it's super important to talk about Indya Moore's story, to talk about the stories in Pose of the characters, but to talk about the stories of, you know, Paris is Burning, of the people. You know, they say Indya Moore is based off of the character Venus Xtravaganza. The person Venus Xtravaganza from Paris is Burning, who also wanted to be a model, had dreams of being a model, and was pursuing it and doing it. And so I don't know, it's so near and dear to my heart, and I think this is a good stopping place, but know that there's so much to break down and unpack in the TV show, that, yeah, watch Paris is Burning or start Pose if you haven't. That's your homework. Okay, I'm gonna end it there, and we'll roll over into film. Now I'm like all hyped up on Pose. Okay, here we go. Movies. Film. All right. So the in the film section this week, I'm kind of cheating and putting in an episode of a show, but it's one of those shows that's kind of like each episode is completely independent and different and kind of documentary about somebody's story. So the show is called Defining Moments with OZY. OZY is like a media company. I don't know. I don't like the name, but whatever. And it features Dominique Jackson. So it's called Defining Moments with OZY. Dominique Jackson, Her Moment. That's what this episode of this Hulu show is called. Dominique Jackson is the actor who plays Electra on Pose. So there's some carry through, but we're bouncing back into a real individual's story. So yeah, I'm really, really refocusing Pose in my life, and it's giving me so much. And I think that we have to remember in storytelling that like there's protagonists and antagonists, and sometimes the antagonists are just as delicious and people you want to root for as the protagonist. That is Miss Electra Abundance, okay? The character on Pose is like, you know that Electra has been through all the shit. You know that. But what you see is a composed, divine, gorgeous, stunning, intimidating, scary. Scary in the way of her words, not her looks. Her looks are, I mean, I think she says in Pose, there's a line about like, I can pass like any white woman on Park Avenue or something like this. So definitely passing as a woman. I mean, she has, if there's a hierarchy of trans women, Electra is at the top because she has been through so much. She's lived through so much. She's a bit older. She takes the balls very seriously. Dominique Jackson is, I mean, such a good actress because she is such a sweet and sensitive soul. When I watched this episode with that featured her story, I was like, damn, wow, to play this character when like Dominique Jackson is commanding as a person, like it seems, from what I've seen, but she's not mean, she's not vindictive, she's not, reading bitches for filth, and she's actually she's like so many of these trans women who have lived to fight, just an activist and someone who wants to make things better instead of have things remain how it was for her. So this is a black trans woman from Trinidad and Tobago, and she she talks about being in survival mode and not valuing her life, and in this documentary episode, they show her like how she's put up photos around her apartment, how that's a big deal because before she didn't feel like she cared about herself. So she knew at 4 years old that she was trans. Can you imagine? Being a 4-year-old? People are calling you boy. People are telling you you're a boy, and you feel like I was born in the wrong body. In Trinidad and Tobago, I think it's very religious, and so she was I forget the word, acolyte. She was an acolyte, which meant like it was like a privileged position for a youth, like where you like usher in the church and you have a role. and there was a pedophile priest. And so the priest took her to the beach one day and raped her in the ocean at the beach. And she remembers saying, I have to get out, I have to leave after that. So she moves to Baltimore with her mother, who had left Trinidad and Tobago. And she had her first interaction with other trans women and just couldn't live with her mother as a she wasn't her mother wasn't allowing her to live with her. Her mother wasn't allowing her to live as a female in her house. So, and she couldn't go home to Trinidad and Tobago. So she would have to detransition, right? So she moved to New York City in 1995. And she takes on the persona, or not the persona, but like her name is like for the balls is Tyra Allure Ross. Now apparently she was huge in the ball scene, like just killing, slaying. So in the documentary, they go down to Christopher Street, which is in Greenwich Village, and it's like where Stonewall Inn is, where the riots occurred. And she goes by the talks about like the pier and voguing and reading family, like all the elements that you see in Pose. She lived it. She lived it, and almost got very caught up in the darkness of sex work. She was in New York City, and she was going to have sex with some man, and these girls from the ballroom, they encouraged her not to. And they said, that man has AIDS, so no. And so from then on, she was like super involved in the ballroom stuff. She thought she was positive for many, many years, and she didn't get tested. She didn't want it confirmed. And for a while she was in a marriage with a straight man. It's complicated dating and like partnership too as a trans woman, because there are straight cisgender men who want to be with transgender women, but who are ashamed of that. And so they will take it out on that woman because of that feeling, because society doesn't accept it, so they don't accept themselves, and they take it out on whoever's there. So the guy who she was married to thought she should live in stealth, like not out as a trans woman. So she tucked for 21 years. She tried to cut it off herself. It's the things that we're pushed to go through in order to just be ourselves. It's wild. So right after her bottom surgery, she auditioned for Pose, and she said she went in for the audition. She was like, I know I'm not going to get this, but I know I need to play this character. And yeah, and an interesting part, the way they kind of ended it off, was that she is more this is a friend or like someone in her community talking about this, but that she's more fearful after the visibility. And she currently is she's with her partner Edwin, who I think started out as her security guard and then became her personal manager, and now is her partner, her boyfriend. And so kind of nice to have all those things wrapped up in one person. But yeah, and they ended it with her. They have several conversations with her mother, um, and her acceptance, of Dominique. And so her mother is saying how she's growing daily, and Dominique kind of like got to a point where she was like, I know I need to love her her from a distance, but I still want her in my life. I'm telling you, the maturity of queer people and people who have been ostracized from their family members to still love after being ostracized. Ugh, gets me. So, if this isn't enough motivation for you to watch Pose and highlight and center the characters of some of our time's most influential and powerful and visible trans Black women. Oh my God. Like, I don't know what else to say. You gotta, you gotta. And again, I'm gonna say it again. I'm not holding Pose up to be this flawless show. I'm not saying that, like, I'm not saying I wouldn't love to see like the version made by more of the people who are there, or the version where people of color are in the executive production seat. But what this opens us up for is so much more in the future. Now, I don't take it for granted. I don't think, oh, now that Pose has happened, we're going to get more of this. I feel like we are, as a society, and especially I see it in my generation, like decolonizing our thinking and changing ourselves and how we move through the world. But that is not always guaranteed to be reflected in Hollywood. So again, Pose broke through, and it's a miracle. So watch this show and get inspired about queer POC stories, especially stories about Black and brown queens in the ballroom scene, not just in the 80s and 90s, but today. A lot of these houses, the House of Xtravaganza, these houses are still active. So see what the ballroom culture is like around you. I have still never been to a ball, even though I've known about them for the past few years, like being in Berlin and stuff. And so super eager to get into it myself. Love highlighting and focusing these Black trans women's stories. Okay, we're going to end it here. Bless Dominique Jackson, bless Indya Moore, bless everyone involved in Pose. And we're going to roll through the outro. Hey, listen, sometimes you gotta check in with yourself. Okay, so we're in the outro. We're coming back home. For me, it's been such a rough couple weeks. My pain has been like up, and my psychological shit has been up, but not up as in good, like just like but I have some nice things also happening as well. I'm gonna do merch this year. So I have 2 merch items gonna be selling, t-shirts and stickers. Super love these sorts of projects and that sort of thing. I am making my own merch. So I order t-shirts, and I'm gonna be like making each one. So it's ambitious, but it is it's my way. So I'm super pumped. I took a 2D design course at the University of Redlands, and there we had Jean, and we made stencils and learned how to like make t-shirts. And so I'm doing it. I'm putting my college degree to work. Yeah, I don't even want to get into the bullshit, but just hard sometimes when you feel like you have a lot going on, and then something good happens and you're like, oh, I have to take advantage of this opportunity, but you don't get enough like rest. I think that's my situation in this month. But I'm feeling centered. I'm feeling like I'm very looking forward to going back to Germany. Oh, the US is just so burdensome. It weighs so heavy on me being here. I don't know. I mean, I don't know why, and I do know why. So yeah, just planning to be in Germany in 2 weeks and do lots of performances and allow my like creative stuff to grow is going to be great. Another update that's wild is that I'm going to be having surgery to see essentially like how bad this condition is. And then one of the options to consider is like having my uterus removed. So I'm thinking so much. I already think a lot about like intersectionality and gender and stuff like this. But having an operation where I would be removing my reproductive organs, it I don't know, it's really got me thinking in a positive way. It's really got me feeling like, could this be not only like what's next, but like something that I need, and imagining my life not dealing with the pain and the suffering that I deal with currently. It's like even just imagining a life beyond the pain, that you grow to become accustomed to, that you like allow to live in your house, not that you have a choice. And yeah, it's just super interesting to think about, so I'll keep you updated because I think it's fascinating and it kind of relates to my like gender journey, this option. Yeah, that's all I got for today. Excuse me. I know this episode was supposed to come out last week. Gonna do it this week. We'll see if I can do another one this week, but also gonna do more performance videos. Another weird thing is like it's hard to watch myself. I still like sometimes I like once I can sit down and do it, I smile, watching the videos, but it's hard. I don't know. It's so weird. I feel like I've talked about this before. So, yeah, gotta watch those videos and then upload them and then share them with you. Wishing you such a nice Pride Month, such a nice summer. And remember that Corona is still out there, so don't lax up too much with your personal boundaries and things around Corona. That's what I have to say. Even when the laws are loosening up around you, still remain your own personal safety. Okay, sending much love. And yeah, if you've been in low power mode, oof, I've really been in there too. But hoping to let go and have fun over the next couple months. So hope you do too. See you next time.
I've been in low power mode. In low power mode. Been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear. I've been in low. I've been in low power mode all year. Think it's time to switch it up to high gear.